The following footage was recovered from Jake Morrison's phone 3 days after his disappearance in the Appalachian Mountains, October 2023. This story was submitted to our channel last week by Jake's sister. Jake Morrison hasn't been seen since. Before we dive into Jake's terrifying encounter, you need to understand what we're dealing with. The Goatman isn't just some internet urban legend or creepypasta fiction. This creature has been documented across multiple states for over 7 decades. Before we dive into Jake's terrifying encounter, you need to understand what we're dealing with. The Goatman isn't just some internet urban legend or creepypasta fiction. This creature has been documented across multiple states for over 7 decades. The first recorded sighting dates back to 1957 in Louisville, Kentucky, where witnesses described a 7-foot-tall humanoid creature with the head of a goat, powerful human-like arms, and digitigrade legs ending in cloven hooves. But Kentucky isn't alone in these encounters. Texas has the Lake Worth monster, first spotted in 1969 near Fort Worth. Maryland reports the Goatman of Bowie, allegedly created in government experiments gone wrong during the 1970s. And who could forget the Pope Lick monster of Kentucky, a half-man, half-goat entity that's been terrorizing the Pope Lick Creek area for generations. But here's what makes Jake's case different from every other documented Goatman encounter in cryptozoological records. The Appalachian Mountain region spanning Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia has seen an unusual spike in missing persons cases over the past 5 years. According to the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, over 127 people have vanished without a trace in areas where Goatman sightings have been reported. The Daniel Boone National Forest alone accounts for 23 of these disappearances. Mammoth Cave National Park, another 15. Great Smoky Mountains, 18 more. The pattern is undeniable when you plot the locations on a map. Most vanish during late fall months, October through December. Most are experienced hikers or campers. Most are found days later with their phones intact, but the footage tells a story that defies explanation. Jake Morrison became number 128 on October 15, 2023. But unlike the others, Jake was documenting everything. He was a cryptid enthusiast, amateur researcher, and most importantly, he knew he was walking into Goatman territory. The question isn't whether he found what he was looking for. The question is, did it find him first? Jake Morrison, 28 years old, worked as a software engineer in Cincinnati, Ohio. But his real passion was cryptozoology, the study of hidden or unknown animals. His YouTube channel, Midwest Mysteries, had over 45,000 subscribers who followed his investigations into Bigfoot sightings, Mothman encounters, and unexplained phenomena across the Ohio River Valley. 3 months before his disappearance, Jake had become obsessed with a particular thread on Reddit's cryptid community. A user named Appalachian Watcher had posted detailed accounts of Goatman encounters, complete with GPS coordinates, photographs of tracks, and audio recordings of what sounded like human speech mixed with animal vocalizations. The post described a specific area in the Daniel Boone National Forest where multiple witnesses had reported seeing a creature that matched historical Goatman descriptions. But this wasn't just any random forest location. According to Appalachian Watcher, this was Ground Zero, the place where all the regional Goatman legends originated. Jake spent weeks researching the coordinates. He cross-referenced missing persons reports, studied topographical maps, and even reached out to local park rangers. What he discovered made him more determined than ever to investigate personally. The area had been the site of Native American spiritual grounds for the Shawnee tribe. European settlers in the 1800s reported devil sightings in the same region. And modern-day witnesses described encounters with a creature that seemed to possess human-level intelligence. A creature that knew their names before they introduced themselves. On October 12, 2023, Jake posted what would be his final video to YouTube. In it, he announced his solo camping expedition to investigate the Goatman claims firsthand. The video received over 12,000 comments, with hundreds of viewers begging him not to go alone. Going alone is dangerous, Jake. Take someone with you. These creatures are territorial. They don't like investigators. But Jake was determined. He'd packed professional recording equipment, night vision cameras, audio enhancement devices, and enough supplies for a week-long investigation. His plan was simple. Set up base camp in the exact coordinates provided by Appalachian Watcher and document everything. His sister Sarah tried to convince him to wait, to take backup, to inform park authorities of his plans. Jake's response, captured in a text message sent at 11:47 p.m. on October 12th, would haunt her forever. Sarah, if something happens to me out there, make sure people know the truth. These things are real, and someone needs to prove it. At 6:23 a.m. on October 13th, Jake's phone GPS pinged for the last time at the entrance to the Daniel Boone National Forest. Security cameras at the visitor center captured his Jeep Cherokee pulling into the parking area. He was alone just as he'd planned. What happened next wasn't discovered until 3 days later, when his sister filed a missing persons report after Jake failed to return home. Search and rescue teams found his abandoned campsite 4.2 miles into the forest. His Jeep was still in the parking lot, keys in the ignition, wallet, and identification left behind. But his phone was found another 11 miles away, in an area so remote that rescue teams needed GPS guidance just to locate it. The Kentucky State Police released Jake's phone to his family after their investigation concluded with no evidence of foul play. What they didn't tell Sarah Morrison was what they found on that phone. What they didn't mention in their official report were the files that couldn't be explained by conventional means. 72 hours of video footage, 14 hours of audio recordings, and 847 photographs, many of which showed things that shouldn't exist in the forests of Kentucky. When Sarah first watched her brother's recordings, she contacted local news stations, paranormal investigators, even cryptozoology research groups. Most dismissed the footage as elaborate hoaxes or misidentified wildlife. But 3 independent video analysis experts confirmed the same disturbing conclusion. The footage hadn't been tampered with or digitally altered. What you're about to witness is Jake Morrison's complete documentation of his encounter with the Kentucky Goatman. The footage has been organized chronologically, enhanced for audio clarity, and supplemented with maps and additional context where necessary. But before we begin, you should know Jake Morrison isn't the first person to capture video evidence of this creature. And based on what his footage reveals about Goatman behavior and intelligence, he probably won't be the last. The Kentucky State Police have reopened their investigation. Park rangers now patrol the area in pairs, never alone. And Appalachian Watcher, the Reddit user who provided Jake with the coordinates, hasn't posted anything since October 16, 2023, the day after Jake disappeared. This is Jake's story. This is what really happened in the Daniel Boone National Forest. And this is why Sarah Morrison asked us to share it with the world. Because according to Jake's final recording, the Goatman isn't just hunting random hikers. It's specifically targeting people who come looking for it. People like you watching this video right now, learning exactly where these encounters take place. Sweet dreams. But nothing could prepare Jake for what happened on his first night in the Daniel Boone National Forest. According to the metadata on his phone recordings, the terror began at exactly 2:33 a.m. on October 14, 2023. Jake's whispered recording captures something that cryptozoologists have documented across 17 different states: the distinctive sound pattern of a bipedal hoofed creature moving through dense woodland. But what makes this recording unique is the deliberate, almost calculated nature of the movement. Listen carefully to the audio signature. The creature is circling Jake's tent in a counterclockwise pattern, exactly matching behavior documented in Goatman encounters from Maryland's Prince George's County, Texas's Lake Worth area, and Wisconsin's Beast of Bray Road sightings. But there's something else in Jake's recording that wasn't immediately apparent. Audio enhancement software reveals a second set of footsteps, lighter, following approximately 30 feet behind the primary creature. This suggests coordinated hunting behavior, something that challenges everything we know about solitary cryptid encounters. The Appalachian region has a long history of creature encounters that exhibit pack-like intelligence. The Cherokee Nation has oral traditions dating back over 400 years describing Kekilkudla, shape-shifting entities that hunt in coordinated groups during the autumn months when the veil between worlds grows thin. Let me ask you this and tell me your answer in the comments. What would you have done if something was circling your tent at 2:30 in the morning? Because based on documented cryptid encounters, Jake's response reveals a critical mistake that has led to dozens of disappearances across the American wilderness. According to the North American Wood Ape Conservancy's database of anomalous encounters, remaining silent and motionless actually triggers predatory stalking behavior in large bipedal cryptids. The breathing pattern captured in Jake's recording matches audio signatures collected by researchers in West Virginia's Monongahela National Forest, where similar creatures have been documented since 1994. Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum's biomechanical analysis of cryptid vocalizations identifies the specific breathing pattern as consistent with a creature possessing both human and ungulate respiratory characteristics. What's particularly disturbing about Jake's first night recording is the duration of the encounter. Most documented Goatman sightings last between 3 to 7 minutes. Jake's creature maintained its circling behavior for over 40 minutes, suggesting either exceptional persistence or intelligence sophisticated enough to understand psychological warfare. The Fouke monster incidents of Arkansas, documented extensively in the 1970s, showed similar prolonged stalking behavior. Witnesses reported creatures that would circle homes and campsites for hours, as if studying human responses and learning optimal times to strike. By 3:15 a.m., Jake's recording captures something that no previous Goatman encounter has documented: the sound of what appears to be communication between multiple entities, low-frequency vocalizations that seem to follow a pattern, almost like primitive language. This changes everything we understand about cryptid behavior in the eastern United States. When dawn broke over the Daniel Boone National Forest on October 14th, Jake's first instinct was to document everything. What he found around his campsite provides the most compelling physical evidence of Goatman presence ever captured on video. The track impressions Jake discovered aren't just random animal prints. They follow a specific pattern documented by the International Cryptozoology Museum in Portland, Maine, a research facility that has been cataloging anomalous track castings since 1982. Jake's measurements show prints averaging 14 inches in length with a distinctive cloven hoof front section and what appears to be a human-like heel impression. The depth of the impressions, when calculated against the moisture content of the forest floor, suggests a creature weighing between 400 to 500 pounds. But weight distribution isn't the only anomaly. The stride length, measured at 58 inches between prints, indicates a creature capable of moving in a bipedal gait despite possessing hooved appendages. This biological impossibility has puzzled cryptozoologists for decades. The Boggy Creek monster of Arkansas, documented in multiple eyewitness accounts from 1971 to 1974, displayed identical track characteristics. The Michigan Dogman encounters from 1887 through present day show the same impossible combination of human and animal locomotion features. Jake documented something else: that morning claw marks on surrounding trees at a height of approximately 8 to 9 feet above ground level. Forest Service reports from similar marking discoveries across Virginia's George Washington National Forest describe identical scarring patterns on hardwood trees. The claw marks follow a distinctive 5-finger pattern, but with elongated proportions that don't match any known North American wildlife. The depth of the gouges, measured using standard forestry techniques, required approximately 800 pounds of pressure per square inch, far exceeding the claw strength of black bears, the region's largest predators. Jake's phone metadata shows he transmitted these photographs to 3 separate wildlife biologists within hours of their discovery. The responses he received challenge conventional explanations for cryptid encounters. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a mammologist with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources, provided written analysis stating that the track impressions don't match any cataloged species native to Kentucky's ecosystem. Her report, submitted to the state wildlife database, remains classified as unidentified species pending further investigation. The University of Kentucky's Anthropology Department, when shown Jake's claw mark photographs, determined that the scarring patterns are inconsistent with natural animal behavior, but consistent with deliberate territorial marking by an unknown bipedal entity. This is where the recording gets disturbing, because Jake's evidence suggests the creature wasn't just passing through. It was claiming territory. What Jake discovered next provides insight into cryptid territorial behavior that has never been documented with this level of detail. Around his campsite perimeter, he found what appeared to be deliberate arrangements of rocks, branches, and forest debris. These formations aren't random. They match territorial marking patterns observed in Sasquatch research across the Pacific Northwest, specifically the Olympic Peninsula investigations conducted by the Olympic Project research team since 2009. The arrangements form a rough circle approximately 200 feet in diameter, with Jake's tent positioned at the exact center. This type of spatial organization suggests planning, foresight, and understanding of human psychology, the ability to create psychological pressure through environmental manipulation. Similar formations have been documented at missing persons locations across Montana's Glacier National Park, where 15 hikers have vanished under mysterious circumstances since 2015. The Missing 411 research database, compiled by former law enforcement officer David Paulides, catalogs over 1,400 disappearances in national parks, where similar evidence patterns have been found. But Jake made one crucial mistake that morning. Instead of leaving the area immediately, he began actively investigating these territorial markers. He approached them, photographed them, and in doing so, demonstrated that he wasn't intimidated by the creature's psychological warfare. According to Cryptid behavioral research, this type of defiant response triggers escalation. The creature interprets investigation of its territorial markers as a direct challenge, a challenge that must be answered with increasingly aggressive encounters. Jake had unknowingly declared war on something that had been hunting in these mountains for generations. Time for some context that will help you understand why Jake's encounter is so significant. The Goatman phenomenon isn't isolated to Kentucky. It's part of a larger pattern of cryptid encounters across the eastern United States that dates back to the earliest European settlements. The Pope Lick monster of Kentucky has been terrorizing the Jefferson County area since the 1950s. According to the Louisville Metro Police Department's incident reports, over 200 people have claimed encounters with a creature matching Goatman descriptions near the Pope Lick Creek Railroad trestle. Maryland's Prince George's County Goatman gained national attention in 1971 when dozens of witnesses reported a 7-foot-tall creature with human intelligence and goat-like features terrorizing suburban neighborhoods. The Prince George's County Police Department logged 47 separate incident reports between August and October 1971. But Kentucky's version is different from these suburban encounters. The Daniel Boone National Forest Goatman represents what cryptozoologists call a wilderness variant, more aggressive, more intelligent, and significantly more dangerous than its urban counterparts. The Cherokee Nation's oral traditions describe the Kekle-Kudla, shape-shifting entities that possessed both human and animal characteristics. These beings were said to inhabit the deepest portions of the Appalachian wilderness, emerging only when their territory was threatened by outsiders. According to Cherokee elder Joseph Horn, interviewed by the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of the American Indian in 1987, these entities were protectors of the sacred places, punishing those who entered without permission or proper respect. Jake's growing concern wasn't unfounded. His research into missing persons cases had uncovered a disturbing pattern that law enforcement agencies across multiple states were beginning to recognize. The National Missing and Unidentified Persons System shows that wilderness areas with documented cryptid sightings experience disappearance rates 347% higher than comparable areas without such encounters. The correlation is so strong that some federal agencies have begun quietly adjusting search and rescue protocols for these regions. Great Smoky Mountains National Park, where Goatman sightings have been reported since 1964, averages 23 missing persons cases per year, compared to the national park average of 6.8 cases annually. The difference becomes even more pronounced when examining cases where individuals vanish without leaving conventional tracking evidence. Jake's campsite location, when cross-referenced with historical disappearances, sits within a 2.5-mile radius of where 14 people have vanished since 1995. The most recent case before Jake was Marcus Wheeler, a 31-year-old wildlife photographer who disappeared on September 22, 2023, just 3 weeks before Jake's expedition. Marcus Wheeler's camera equipment was found 1.8 miles from his abandoned campsite. The final photographs on his memory card showed evidence of the same territorial marking behavior. Jake discovered rock formations arranged in deliberate patterns around his camping area. But Marcus made the same mistake Jake would make 3 weeks later. He stayed to investigate instead of leaving immediately upon discovering the markers. Comment what you think happened to those missing people, because Jake's recordings are about to provide answers that law enforcement agencies don't want you to know. Jake's phone records show that by late afternoon on October 14th, he had begun experiencing what cryptid researchers call proximity effects, psychological and physiological responses to extended exposure to anomalous entities. These effects are well documented in Sasquatch research. The Sasquatch Genome Project, led by Dr. Melba Ketchum, has identified specific biomarkers associated with close proximity cryptid encounters. Witnesses consistently report feelings of being watched, auditory hallucinations, and an overwhelming sense of impending danger. Jake's video recordings from that afternoon show clear signs of psychological distress. His usual confident demeanor gives way to nervous glances over his shoulder, frequent checks of his surroundings, and an increasingly urgent desire to document everything, as if he intuitively understood this might be his only opportunity to share what he was experiencing. The Bridgewater Triangle research conducted by cryptozoologist Christopher Balzano documented similar psychological progression in witnesses who remained in anomalous areas for extended periods. Stage 1, curiosity. Stage 2, unease. Stage 3, terror. Stage 4, psychological breakdown or disappearance. By evening of his first full day, Jake had progressed to stage 2. His recordings capture him repeatedly stating that he felt like he was being watched, that something was wrong with the forest around him. He mentions that normal wildlife sounds had ceased entirely, a phenomenon known as forest silence that precedes cryptid encounters in 89% of documented cases. The psychological pressure being applied here represents a sophisticated hunting strategy. Rather than immediate attack, the creature is establishing dominance, creating fear, and studying its prey's responses, behavior consistent with apex predators that have learned to hunt the most dangerous game, humans who come specifically seeking them. The scream Jake captured at 12:23 a.m. represents the most clear audio documentation of Goatman vocalization ever recorded. Audio analysis reveals frequency patterns that shouldn't be possible from any known North American species. The vocalization contains harmonics spanning from 20 Hz to 8,000 Hz, a range that encompasses both infrasound frequencies that trigger instinctive fear responses in humans, and ultrasonic frequencies typically produced only by much smaller mammals. This suggests vocal apparatus unlike anything in the zoological record. Dr. R. Scott Nelson's Sasquatch language research at the University of Alberta identified similar complex vocalizations in Pacific Northwest encounters, but none with the harmonic sophistication captured in Jake's recording. This suggests either evolutionary development of communication abilities, or something far more disturbing. The timing of the vocalization is equally significant. It occurs exactly when Jake realizes the creature has hands, suggesting the scream was a response to Jake's recognition of its intelligence. This implies not just cognitive awareness, but understanding of human psychological states and the ability to respond to them in real time. What Jake doesn't realize during this recording is that the creature's behavior has shifted from reconnaissance to active hunting. The next phase of the encounter will demonstrate capabilities that fundamentally challenge our understanding of what's possible in the wilderness areas of eastern Kentucky. Jake's next recording wasn't found until investigators checked his cloud backup 3 days after his disappearance. What it contains suggests the creature had been planning its next move during those moments of terrifying silence. The Kentucky State Police didn't initially realize that Jake's phone had been automatically uploading footage to cloud storage throughout his expedition. It wasn't until his sister Sarah provided investigators with his Google account credentials that they discovered an additional 6.2 hours of recordings that weren't stored locally on his device. These recordings reveal that Jake had experienced multiple encounters throughout his second day that he hadn't mentioned in his primary documentation. Low-level stalking behavior, peripheral sightings, and evidence that the creature had been systematically testing his responses to various stimuli. The cloud backup files show the creature learning Jake's routine, identifying his vulnerabilities, and planning what can only be described as a calculated psychological assault. This isn't random animal behavior, it's strategic predator intelligence operating at a level comparable to human tactical thinking. Most disturbing is evidence that the creature had been manipulating Jake's environment throughout the day. Objects moved from their original positions, equipment subtly rearranged, and camping supplies relocated in ways designed to create mounting psychological pressure. The Reno giant research from Nevada's Humboldt-Toiyabe National Forest documented similar environmental manipulation tactics, but never with the sophistication shown in Jake's recordings. This suggests either a more advanced entity or one that has had extensive experience hunting human prey. By analyzing the metadata timestamps, investigators determined that the creature had been within 50 feet of Jake's position for over 14 hours across his 2-day expedition, carefully observing and learning before making its final move. Jake was never hunting the Goatman. The Goatman was hunting Jake. At 3:47 a.m. on October 15th, Jake Morrison made the decision that would seal his fate. Instead of remaining in his compromised campsite, he chose to run. According to survival psychology research, this was exactly the response the creature had been engineering through 2 days of psychological manipulation. The audio signature of Jake's chase sequence matches pursuit patterns documented in canine predator research, but with crucial differences. The creature isn't simply following Jake's path. It's herding him toward a specific destination. Dr. Joel Berger's research on predator-prey dynamics in Yellowstone National Park identified similar herding behavior in wolf pack hunting strategies. But wolves use coordinated group tactics. Jake's recordings suggest a single entity with the tactical intelligence to simulate pack behavior. The hoofbeat patterns captured in Jake's recording reveal something that shouldn't be possible. The creature is maintaining a consistent pace despite traversing terrain that includes steep ravines, dense undergrowth, and rocky outcroppings. This suggests intimate knowledge of the local geography that could only come from decades of inhabiting this specific territory. For the next hour, Jake ran through terrain that, according to official Daniel Boone National Forest maps, doesn't exist. His GPS readings show him moving through areas designated as inaccessible wilderness, regions supposedly too dangerous or remote for human travel. The Bridgewater Triangle in Massachusetts has documented similar geographic anomalies, where witnesses report traveling through landscape features that don't appear on any survey maps. These phantom territories are associated with the highest rates of missing persons cases in their respective regions. Screenshot this map and tell us what you notice, because Jake's route reveals something that federal agencies have been trying to keep classified for over 30 years. Jake's GPS data reveals that he traveled 11.3 miles in terrain officially designated as a 2.1-mile trail system. The mathematical impossibility of this distance measurement led to a federal investigation that remains classified under national security provisions. The United States Geological Survey's response to inquiries about Jake's GPS anomalies was a standard form letter stating that electronic navigation equipment can experience interference in areas with high mineral content or electromagnetic anomalies. But Jake's phone was equipped with military-grade GPS technology that specifically compensates for such interference. What Jake discovered during his panicked flight through impossible geography is that certain wilderness areas in the eastern United States contain landscape features that don't conform to conventional surveying methods. These areas, designated as special management zones by the National Park Service, require specialized clearance for scientific research. The Cherokee Nation's historical accounts describe these same areas as spirit lands, where normal rules of distance and direction don't apply. According to tribal elder interviews conducted by the Smithsonian Institution, these regions were avoided by all tribes except during specific ceremonial purposes. Jake's recording equipment captured something else during his chase through impossible terrain, evidence that the landscape itself was somehow responding to the pursuit. Trees that appeared freshly fallen, blocking certain paths while leaving others clear. Rocky outcroppings that seemed to shift position between his forward movement and backward glances. The Michigan dogman encounters from the Manistee National Forest documented similar environmental manipulation, but never at the scale or sophistication shown in Jake's footage. This suggests either evolved cryptid capabilities or intervention by forces beyond current scientific understanding. What Jake didn't understand was that he wasn't just being chased through unusual terrain. He was being led into a carefully prepared hunting ground that had been claiming victims for generations. As Jake's 11th hour of flight through impossible geography reached its conclusion, His recordings capture the moment he realized the terrible truth about his situation. The creature hadn't been chasing him randomly. It had been guiding him toward a specific location with surgical precision. The mathematics of Jake's route, when plotted on topographical software, reveals a logarithmic spiral pattern identical to hunting strategies employed by deep-sea predators. This type of three-dimensional tactical thinking requires spatial intelligence far beyond anything documented in terrestrial cryptid encounters. But running was exactly what the Goatman wanted him to do. Every step Jake took was leading him further from potential rescue, deeper into territory where the creature held absolute advantage, and closer to a destination that would ensure no evidence of his fate would ever be recovered. The Mogollon monster research from Arizona documented similar herding behavior, but victims were typically found within 48 hours. Jake's case represents something unprecedented. A cryptid entity with the intelligence to plan multi-day psychological operations culminating in permanent victim removal. Jake's final GPS ping places him in a location that doesn't officially exist on any federal survey maps. A place the Cherokee Nation called the Hungry Ground, where the earth itself was said to consume those who entered without proper protection. What happened next would provide answers to questions that cryptozoologists have been asking for over 70 years. But those answers come at a price that Jake Morrison was about to pay in full. The hunt was over. The real encounter was about to begin. And unlike every previous Goatman encounter in documented history, this time, there would be no survivors to tell the tale. What you're about to see is Jake Morrison's final recording. The footage that follows has been authenticated by 3 independent video analysis laboratories and contains imagery that challenges everything we understand about apex predators in North American wilderness areas. Viewer discretion is advised. Jake's GPS data shows that after 11 hours of pursuit through impossible terrain, he had been systematically guided to coordinates that don't appear on any official survey maps. A location the Cherokee Nation historically designated as the Hungry Ground, where tribal members were forbidden to venture without spiritual protection. At 4:23 a.m. on October 15, 2023, Jake Morrison found himself hiding behind a fallen oak tree in terrain that, according to geological surveys, should not exist at his recorded elevation. The creature that had been orchestrating his psychological breakdown for 3 days was about to reveal itself completely. The audio analysis of the creature's approach reveals something unprecedented in cryptid encounter documentation. The hoofsteps follow a complex rhythm pattern: 3 short steps, pause, 2 longer steps, pause, repeat. This isn't random movement. It's a calculated psychological pressure technique designed to build anticipation and terror. Dr. Elizabeth Marsh's research on predator psychology at the University of Montana documented similar rhythmic stalking behavior in mountain lions, but only when targeting prey that the predator has studied for extended periods. The mathematical precision of the creature's approach suggests Jake had been under observation far longer than his 3-day expedition. When a predator stops chasing active prey, it typically means one of 2 things. The prey has entered territory where escape is impossible, or the predator has identified optimal conditions for a successful kill. Jake's biometric readings, captured through his smartwatch's heart rate monitor, show he instinctively understood which scenario applied to his situation. Jake's phone camera, despite moisture damage and 3 days of wilderness exposure, captures the first high-definition footage of what cryptozoologists have been attempting to document for over 70 years. The image quality allows for detailed biomechanical analysis that has revolutionized our understanding of North American cryptid physiology. The entity measures approximately 7 feet 3 inches in height, with a body mass estimated between 450 to 500 pounds based on ground depression analysis and movement dynamics. The creature exhibits perfect bipedal locomotion despite possessing distinctly ungulate lower extremities, a biological impossibility that challenges fundamental principles of evolutionary biology. The vocalization captured at timestamp 4:26 a.m. represents the most comprehensive audio documentation of cryptid communication ever recorded. Frequency analysis reveals harmonic structures that shouldn't be possible from any known mammalian vocal apparatus, suggesting either unprecedented evolutionary adaptation or something beyond current scientific classification. The creature's facial features combine human cranial structure with caprine characteristics in proportions that appear mathematically designed for maximum psychological impact on human observers. This suggests either millions of years of evolutionary refinement or intelligent design specifically intended to trigger instinctive fear responses in Homo sapiens. Notice how the creature moves during this approach sequence. Unlike documented Sasquatch encounters where entities typically exhibit shy or avoidance behavior, this Goatman demonstrates territorial confidence. It's not hiding from Jake. It's presenting itself deliberately, knowing that Jake has no means of escape. This behavior has never been documented before in any cryptid encounter across North America. The creature's body language suggests it understands the psychological impact of its appearance and is using that knowledge as a weapon against Jake's mental state. The next 4 minutes of Jake's recording provide unprecedented documentation of what cryptozoologists term psychological predation, the use of cognitive manipulation to incapacitate prey before physical contact. This represents a level of intelligence that fundamentally challenges our understanding of non-human consciousness. The entity positions itself exactly 47 feet from Jake's hiding position, close enough to demonstrate detailed physical characteristics, far enough to prevent successful flight. This distance calculation suggests spatial intelligence comparable to human tactical thinking combined with predatory instincts that have been refined through decades of hunting experience. The creature's breathing pattern during this observation phase matches meditation techniques documented in advanced martial arts training. Slow, controlled, purposeful, suggesting not just intelligence, but emotional regulation capabilities that allow it to maintain psychological control during high-stress encounters. Jake's biometric data during this period shows physiological responses consistent with extreme psychological trauma. Heart rate exceeding 180 BPM, cortisol levels that would typically require medical intervention, and brain wave patterns suggesting complete fight-or-flight system activation. The absence of normal forest sounds during this encounter creates what acoustic researchers call a sound shadow, an area where natural audio seems to be absorbed or suppressed by unknown means. This phenomenon has been documented at other cryptid encounter sites but never with the completeness shown in Jake's recording. The creature appears to be studying Jake with scientific curiosity rather than immediate predatory intent. It tilts its head at specific angles, moves to examine him from different perspectives, and demonstrates what can only be described as analytical thinking processes. Enhanced audio analysis reveals something that Jake never consciously noticed during his encounter: the presence of at least 2 additional entities positioned outside his visual range. The creatures appear to be communicating through subsonic frequencies that human hearing cannot detect but that Jake's recording equipment captured. This coordinated behavior suggests pack intelligence that has never been documented in cryptid encounters. The implications are staggering. These entities don't just hunt individually. They plan, coordinate, and execute group strategies against human targets. What happens next will change everything we think we know about the intelligence level of cryptid entities in North American wilderness areas. At 4:31 a.m. on October 15, 2023, Jake Morrison became the first person in recorded cryptozoological history to engage in direct verbal communication with a Goatman entity. What follows challenges every assumption we've made about the intelligence level and linguistic capabilities of North American cryptids. The creature's first word, Jake, demonstrates not just linguistic capability, but specific knowledge of its target's identity. This implies either supernatural awareness or, more disturbingly, access to human information systems that allowed it to research its intended victim before the encounter. Biomechanical analysis of the entity's speech production reveals vocal apparatus that combines human laryngeal structures with modifications that shouldn't exist in nature. The creature is literally built for interspecies communication, suggesting either evolutionary adaptation specifically for human interaction or intelligent modification of natural physiology. Jake's question, "How do you know my name?" receives an answer that redefines our understanding of cryptid territorial behavior. The creature's response suggests these entities don't randomly encounter humans. They actively research and select specific targets based on criteria we're only beginning to understand. This is the only recorded instance of direct Kentucky Goatman speech in cryptozoological literature. Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum's analysis of the audio patterns identifies linguistic structures that suggest the creature possesses not just communication ability, but understanding of human psychological responses to specific phrases and vocal tones. The creature's statement, "You came to find us," implies several disturbing possibilities. Either these entities monitor human internet communications and social media to identify potential targets, or they possess surveillance capabilities that allow them to track individuals who express interest in cryptid research. The creature's use of plural pronouns, us rather than me, confirms what enhanced audio analysis had already suggested. Jake isn't facing a single entity, but a coordinated group with established hierarchical communication structures. Jake's recording equipment captures something that law enforcement agencies have classified under federal security provisions. Evidence that these entities possess organizational intelligence comparable to human tribal structures, complete with coordinated hunting strategies and information-sharing protocols. The linguistic analysis of the creature's speech patterns reveals vocabulary acquisition that suggests extended observation of human behavior. The entity uses Jake's name with perfect pronunciation, understands interrogative sentence structure, and responds to questions with grammatically appropriate answers. Comment your theory. Why did it know Jake's name? Because the implications of this targeted selection process suggest that cryptid encounters aren't random wilderness accidents. They're carefully planned operations conducted by entities with intelligence gathering capabilities that rival federal agencies. The electromagnetic interference captured in Jake's recording begins at the exact moment the creature attempts more complex communication. This suggests that the entity's neurological activity operates at frequencies that disrupt human electronic equipment, a biological defense mechanism that explains why so few cryptid encounters are successfully documented. Dr. Melba Ketchum's research on cryptid bioelectromagnetic signatures documented similar equipment failure patterns in Sasquatch encounters, but never with the intensity shown in Jake's footage. This suggests either a more advanced entity or one that has developed specific countermeasures against human recording technology. The creature's final attempt at communication reveals something that has terrified cryptozoologists since the first organized research began in the 1970s. These entities are not just intelligent, they're evolving their capabilities in response to human technological advancement. Jake's final clear recording captures the moment when human cryptid communication breaks down completely. The creature's attempts to speak become increasingly distorted, as if multiple voices are trying to communicate through a single vocal apparatus. Enhanced audio analysis reveals that the creature's final vocalizations contain at least 7 distinct voice patterns, all speaking simultaneously in perfect synchronization. This suggests either collective consciousness or technological augmentation that allows multiple entities to coordinate vocal output through a single physical form. The psychological pressure being applied to Jake during these final moments exceeds what human consciousness can process. His biometric readings show complete system shutdown, not death, but psychological fragmentation that occurs when the human mind encounters stimuli beyond its evolutionary capacity to comprehend. The phone was found positioned on a flat rock formation that geological surveys indicated shouldn't exist at those coordinates. When GPS coordinates were double-checked, the location appeared on satellite imagery but not on any terrestrial survey maps dating back to 1952. Kentucky State Police Detective Ray Thornton's initial incident report, later classified under federal security provisions, described finding additional electronic devices of unknown origin at the discovery site. When pressed for details during a recorded interview with Jake's family, Detective Thornton stated that he had been instructed to limit his comments to information approved for public release. The final video from Jake's phone required specialized enhancement by federal audio specialists before meaningful analysis was possible. 3 independent laboratories confirmed the same disturbing conclusion. The recording contained acoustic signatures that don't match any known natural or artificial sound generation methods. The enhanced audio reveals that Jake's final recording captured at least 3 distinct entities communicating simultaneously through what appears to be shared vocal apparatus. The harmonic complexity suggests either biological impossibility or technological augmentation beyond current human capability. Jake Morrison remains classified as a missing person by Kentucky State Police. Search operations were officially terminated after 14 days, when investigators determined that standard search protocols were insufficient for the terrain conditions encountered. Unofficial sources within the search team's report discovering evidence that led to federal agency intervention and immediate classification of all findings. But here's what they didn't tell the public during press conferences and official statements. Jake's phone wasn't the only electronic device recovered from the area. The phone was found positioned on a flat rock formation that geological surveys indicated shouldn't exist at those coordinates. When GPS coordinates were double-checked, the location appeared on satellite imagery but not on any terrestrial survey maps dating back to 1952. Kentucky State Police Detective Ray Thornton's initial incident report, later classified under federal security provisions, described finding additional electronic devices of unknown origin at the discovery site. When pressed for details during a recorded interview with Jake's family, Detective Thornton stated that he had been instructed to limit his comments to information approved for public release. The final video from Jake's phone required specialized enhancement by federal audio specialists before meaningful analysis was possible. 3 independent laboratories confirmed the same disturbing conclusion. The recording contained acoustic signatures that don't match any known natural or artificial sound generation methods. The enhanced audio reveals that Jake's final recording captured at least 3 distinct entities communicating simultaneously through what appears to be shared vocal apparatus. The harmonic complexity suggests either biological impossibility or technological augmentation beyond current human capability. Jake Morrison remains classified as a missing person by Kentucky State Police. Search operations were officially terminated after 14 days when investigators determined that standard search protocols were insufficient for the terrain conditions encountered. Unofficial sources within the search team's report discovering evidence that led to federal agency intervention and immediate classification of all findings. But here's what they didn't tell the public during press conferences and official statements. Jake's phone wasn't the only electronic device recovered from the area. Federal Bureau of Investigation records, obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests with extensive redactions, confirm that Jake Morrison's case represents the 23rd similar disappearance in Kentucky wilderness areas since 2019. Each case follows an identical pattern. Experienced outdoorsman, solo expedition, electronic equipment found in impossible locations, and recordings that contain evidence requiring specialized federal analysis. The phones and recording devices recovered from these 23 cases tell a consistent story of escalating cryptid intelligence and coordination. Early recordings from 2019 show simple stalking behavior. Recent recordings, including Jake's, demonstrate sophisticated psychological manipulation and direct communication attempts. Sheriff Williams of Pulaski County, Kentucky, agreed to a recorded phone interview regarding the federal involvement in these disappearances. His statement, given on condition of anonymity, reveals information that law enforcement agencies have been instructed to withhold from public disclosure. We found other phones. Lots of other phones. All with similar recordings. The FBI has a whole warehouse facility dedicated to storing electronic evidence from these cases. They call it the Anomalous Documentation Archive, and access requires federal security clearance that most agents don't possess. The patterns documented across these 23 cases suggest that cryptid entities in Kentucky wilderness areas are not just hunting humans. They're studying us, learning our behaviors, and adapting their tactics based on information gathered from previous encounters. Each victim followed the same profile. Male, 25 to 35 years old, experienced in outdoor activities, active on social media discussing cryptid interests, and planning solo expeditions to investigate anomalous sightings. This level of target selection suggests surveillance capabilities that extend far beyond wilderness encounters into digital monitoring of human communication systems. The most disturbing revelation from the federal investigation files is the discovery of what investigators term hunting schedules. The 23 disappearances follow temporal patterns that suggest the entities responsible operate on planned cycles, with victim selection occurring months in advance of actual encounters. Jake Morrison wasn't randomly targeted by a wilderness predator. He was specifically recruited through social media manipulation, guided to predetermined coordinates, and subjected to a planned psychological operation that had been refined through 22 previous successful captures. At 11:47 p.m. on January 18, 2024, exactly 3 months after Jake Morrison's disappearance, his sister Sarah received a text message from an unknown number. The message, verified by cellular provider records as originating from a device that doesn't exist in any manufacturer database, contained information that only Jake could have known. The message read, "Sarah, your brother wants you to visit the woods. He's learned so much about us. He wants to teach you what he's discovered. Come to the coordinates where his phone was found. Come alone like Jake did. We're waiting." Sarah Morrison contacted our research team immediately after receiving this message. Phone carrier analysis confirms the message was transmitted through cellular towers in the Daniel Boone National Forest area, despite those towers being shut down for maintenance on the date of transmission. The message metadata contains geographic coordinates that place its origin at the exact location where Jake's phone was discovered. Federal agencies have sealed access to that area under environmental protection provisions, but satellite imagery from the date of message transmission shows thermal signatures consistent with large bipedal entities in the prohibited zone. Sarah Morrison has requested that our research team accompany her to Kentucky for a comprehensive investigation of her brother's disappearance. Despite federal warnings and local law enforcement recommendations against civilian investigation, she remains determined to discover the truth about Jake's fate. Our expedition is scheduled for February 2024. We will be equipped with military-grade recording equipment, satellite communication systems, and emergency beacon technology designed to maintain contact with external rescue coordination centers, regardless of local electromagnetic interference. If you have information about Jake Morrison's disappearance, similar encounters in Kentucky wilderness areas, or experience with cryptid entities demonstrating advanced intelligence capabilities, contact us through the information provided in this video's description. Subscribe to our channel for exclusive documentation of Sarah Morrison's journey into the Daniel Boone National Forest. We will either return with answers about the Kentucky Goatman phenomenon, or we will provide additional evidence for federal investigators analyzing the disappearance pattern. What would you do if you received Sarah's message? Comment your survival strategy, because based on Jake Morrison's experience, traditional wilderness survival techniques are inadequate for encounters with entities that possess human-level intelligence and supernatural capabilities. The truth about what happened to Jake Morrison is waiting in the Kentucky wilderness. The question is, are we prepared for what we might discover when we find it? Next week, return to the hungry ground Sarah Morrison's search for truth. Subscribe now, hit the notification bell, and pray that we make it back to tell you what we find. Because in the Daniel Boone National Forest, something is still hunting, and it's learned everything it needs to know about us.